Now.
On 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
7:06 on a Friday morning in your nation's capital, 7th day of June. We're going to close out this week strong and informed and entertained and then launch you right into this beautiful weekend. And we appreciate you letting us be a part of your morning routine. Coming up at 7:35, Derek Anderson running for Congress in Virginia. And then at 8:35, Joe Concha, Fox News contributor and media critic. I'm Larry O'Connor, along with the effervescent Patrice Onwuka. Good morning, Patrice.
Good morning, Larry. Happy Friday to everybody.
Amen to that. It is a Friday, for sure. Joining us right now, Nicole Neily. Friends call her Nikki, so I'm going to call her Nikki. She's the president and founder of Parents Defending Education, and she is the recipient of some emails she obtained through a FOIA request having to do with the D.C. public schools and the impact of illegal immigration on that august body. Nicole Neily, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So, this is something that's just sort of not talked about much. And D.C., I think, would be a good microcosm of pretty much every public school system around this country impacted by the influx of, can only be described as millions of illegal immigrants coming into the country, and those children who, based on a Supreme Court decision, are entitled to a publicly funded education. And, I mean, what you have learned through these emails, why don't you share some of the details, because the impact is devastating for the schools and for the students who are here and are citizens and have been trying to get a good education for years.
We filed this public records request in D.C. as well as, frankly, I did them in districts across the country, red states, blue states, just to see how all of these districts are handling this influx, as you've alluded to. And in D.C., unsurprisingly, or not surprisingly, that it is a huge resource strain because there are so many children coming in. There are not enough seats for them. There are not enough translators for them. And so, of course, they have to scramble, they have to move things around. And this same thing is happening across the country, be it in Chicago, be it in Denver, be it in the border in El Paso. And so you think this is really pushing the education system to a breaking point.
Well, and Nikki, I mean, talk to us about what that means for, children who grew up in this neighborhood, citizens, taxpayers who are sending their kids to these schools. I mean, obviously, it's going to have an impact on their ability to learn, and especially given some of these kids were already behind academically. What does it mean for them?
It's a great point. Yeah. The fact that, D.C. schools were closed longer than almost anywhere else in the nation. And we know that the school closures, thank you, Randy Weingarten, really set disadvantaged children back further. And so these kids have more ground to make up. And the teachers, my heart goes out to the teachers because so many of them really do want to do the right thing. But if you have all these children coming in who have very, very significant needs, who don't speak the language, who are high resource users, because in many cases the districts also need to provide wraparound services, healthcare. In some cases we've seen districts providing clothes. So they're trying to be all things for these families that are really needy, whereas children that have been in the system who are also needy are sometimes being pushed to the side. One interesting thing in FOIAs I got from Denver a few months ago, they were going to rezone some of the schools based on the capacity issues. And you think there are families in America who buy houses based on the school pyramid that their children will be in. And then to have that change because of all these immigrants coming in is something that is frankly shocking.
These emails really are explicit, too, in terms of what they're seeing. An email from November 22 said that there's an increase of families with multiple children, 10 to 12 new students in a single day.
Wow.
On a system that is already sort of maxed out. And also, it should be pointed out, as you did, the teachers required for this new influx of students, of course, have to be not only bilingual, but be well-versed in being able to instruct students who have limited, if any, understanding of the English language. It's not just enough to be bilingual. You actually have to you have to know how to instruct a child in another language and then slowly introduce them to the English language. This is, again, you don't hear this much, Nikki. We just had a conversation yesterday about Montgomery County and Frederick County schools who are cutting their remote learning divisions, their academies that were specifically set up for children with special needs who are accommodated better by remote learning, and they have to cut that because of budget constraints. And no one is talking about the elephant in the room, the budget constraint. You can point directly to this crisis.
Yes, absolutely. We got some from a district in Massachusetts where they had hired, I think, there were 17 different translators from like all different kinds of languages, Burmese and Afghan and Ukrainian. And so, again, that's a fiscal outlay that this district is making. Whereas, should that be going, would that money be better spent on tutors for some of these kids that have fallen behind? But there's also, it's been interesting to kind of look at the new lingo that's being used. A lot of these students are referred to as students with limited or interrupted formal education. So these are kids who, maybe because of their immigration journey, just haven't been in school for a long time. And so you think about kind of the behavioral issues that go along with that, the inability to sit still for 8 hours and disrupting other children in the process.
Yeah.
And so that's also something that's an issue of concern for teachers.
Nicki, Neily, you're head of Parents Defending Education. I'm glad that you're looking into this angle because we often think about education in terms of, how much the kids are learning, what are the policymakers doing for, U.S. citizens and naturalized or children who are here legally. And then you have now this new problem that's kind of cropped up over the past couple of years as the southern border has been thrown open. What are policymakers saying in response to this? Is there a solution, well, we just need more money? Or are they saying, no, we actually need to address the illegal immigration problem? Is anybody willing to acknowledge it?
Well, fortunately, this week, the House Education Committee actually had a hearing on it. And I think this is going to be the start of a conversation because obviously we're seeing immigration impact all elements of the American society. But really, our students are so vulnerable. And this really, I think, does put a new spin on it. Certainly, the House Republicans have said we have to address the border issue. I mean, even this new cap that President Biden put in, right? Okay, well, that's great. It's 3,500 people a day plus 1,500 more. And it doesn't account for children. So there are still thousands and thousands of human beings flooding across the border every day. Even at this, quote unquote, cap of 5,000 people a day, there's still, more than 1.8 million people a year. That's more than the population of Phoenix being allowed into this country every year under their lower numbers.
Wow.
And so it's really astonishing that, the Democrats don't seem to be taking this seriously. But let's think about, as we have seen all these families flee the school systems because of the quality, because of the teachers' unions, because of things like that, this is a new influx of students in so that the unions can continue to line their coffers and get their political agenda through. So I think it's, really gross to watch all of these immigrants being used as political pawns by Democrats.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
One last thing about this, Nicki, we're speaking with Nicki Neily, Parents Defending Education. I see a lot of the write-ups here somehow making a pivot and blaming the governor of Texas, Greg Abbott, for busing illegal immigrants up to cities like New York or D.C. or Chicago. But I mean, last I checked, New York, I think, which was the recipient of the largest number of bussed in by the Texas state government illegal immigrants, it only accounted for less than 10% of the illegal immigrants in that city. These are really being relocated by the federal government, by the Biden administration. But for some reason, they're saying, well, it's DeSantis and Abbott's fault, which I don't think is telling the whole story.
Absolutely not. I mean, I actually had asked for emails about this in Martha's Vineyard as well. Remember how Governor DeSantis had sent some up there? They responded to me that they had so many emails. They had 15,000 emails. They couldn't even fulfill my response. And Abbott didn't send that, or DeSantis didn't send that many people up there. But, I mean, the impact on these states, Massachusetts taxpayers have already spent $300 million on this. They're allocated $500 million for next year. Denver is going bankrupt over this. And so this is happening from coast to coast. And for these these blue cities, I think, how do you think Texas has felt for forever? How do you think Arizona and New Mexico have felt forever?
Yes.
I have the world's smallest violin for you. I don't think so.
Nicki Neily, thanks for joining us, Parents Defending
Thank you so
Education.
much.
Check out the website if you want to get informed there. It's defendinged.org. I don't know who Ed is, but boy, he gets a lot of attention from you. I call him Edward because I'm not so close to him. But either way, it's defendinged.org. Don't hate me, Nicki. That's a way for people to remember the website. I promise they'll remember now. Thanks, Nicki.
Thanks for having me on.
It's 7:15 WMAL.